Good morning, everybody. It is 10 o'clock, which means that it is the start of our 9th webinar in our series of climate change and the African entrepreneur. And today we have got two fantastic speakers, and I'm really grateful to Franz and Peter for joining us. And today they will be speaking about a topic which is really, really important, both in terms of the ability to protect and provide safe and nutritious foodstuffs, therefore supporting food and nutrition security, but also its impact on climate change and the environment that we live in. So this is a really important webinar today. If I can just start off by saying that, as always, we have the amazing Rim acting as our live translator, and Rim is translating our conversations today from English to French. And so everybody knows the pack drill. You are able to switch over to the French translation channel using the functions in the Zoom control. So I will leave you to do that, but I'm very, very grateful for Rim for being with us today. So, as I've already mentioned, today is about packaging and the circular economy. I'm really grateful that Franz and Peter are here joining us. And our first speaker this morning is Dr. Franz Liebenspacher, who I am very, very grateful to for joining us. Franz will be speaking for 30 minutes, and he's got an amazing deck that he will be sharing with us. Franz is somebody who comes from a very, very powerful academic background, having studied his PhD at the Technical University in Munich in Germany. And he has had a very strong career within the multinational sector, and is now operating as an independent consultant. And I'm really grateful that he is here today and willing to share his insights, knowledge, and experience. Hi, Franz.
Hi, Stephen.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
So if you'd like to take over the screen.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this topic, which has accompanied me through many years in my life, both the packaging of food and the environmental impact and of food packaging, and also how it can be overcome negative impacts. So, as I mentioned, as you mentioned, Stephen, I've been working for almost 4 decades in the area of food and food packaging, and food packaging and packaging as such was always a very controversial topic. And many products are packed in food. We all interact with it, but on the other hand, we know when packaging has finished its useful life, it ends up as packaging waste, as polluting. Plastic packaging is very controversial and taken up by NGOs, threatening or complaining against the big food companies. That's one side, but the other side is we have a significantly growing population on this planet. These people need food. They need to survive. They need food, and this food is distributed, especially since we have more and more urban areas. It needs packaging to be distributed. But this packaging has a significant environmental impact, so we have to tackle it, and that's what's my presentation about. So. Just a question, Stephen. Can you see my full presentation slides, or do you see the side of my sidebar?
Your screen is coming through perfectly.
Okay, thank you. So, as I mentioned, packaging for food is special. And what does it make special? Food is necessary, is consumed by all of us, and we all and everyone handles the packaging of food. So everyone has an opinion to it, everyone is impacted through it. The food itself, it is necessary for us. We all need to have good food, to stay healthy, to have a good life, to have a well-being, and the packaging is there to enhance the quality of the food. And also in many parts or everywhere, food is precious, and therefore we need a packaging that protect the quality of the food. And food is perishable. All food is perishable, and to make food distributable, to make food that it can be stored, we need packaging to keep it well and the quality of the food over the shelf life of the food. And talking about packaging for food, it's the most important part of packaging. And also going even one step further, then plastic packaging is used, plastic is used to 40% for packaging. So food packaging is special, has a meaning for every one of us. And why do we need the food packaging? Why do we need the packaging around food? So yeah, first of all, we need something to contain the food. The food is, we need something where the food is in. Imagine a world without packaging. Imagine food distribution without packaging. Hardly to be thought of. We need the packaging to protect the quality of the food. Food often is moist, so we need to protect from losing the water inside. Or industrial food often is dry, so we need to protect the food from taking up water, from getting moist, or even humid and moldy and all that. And also many quality parameters of food are sensitive to oxygen, so we need the packaging to protect from oxygen. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, we need the packaging to facilitate the handling and distribution. How to carry food that is produced in the countryside into the cities. You need something to wrap it, to pack it. And also we need the pack around the food to inform the consumers and to inform the customers how to handle the food, how to prepare the food, how to inform on the ingredients of the food. And also packaging is needed as a promoter of the specific brand, of the specific product, so that the consumer in the shop, in the market, knows what he is buying. So, and that he even prefers the product, because usually food distribution is also a business. However, food packaging should not or must not harm consumers' health. That's a topic often overlooked, but constituents of the packaging can move into the food. That has to be avoided. So we have to make sure that the quality of the food is protected without having packaging interacting with the food. And packaging, as mentioned before, needs to have a minimum environmental impact. Talking about environmental impact, I'm sure you all have seen that, what is shown here. Heaps of waste packaging uncontrolled in the environment. I have taken here pictures from Africa, but we find such situation in many parts of the world. And nowadays, more in developing countries, but still, when I was a child, I also remember dumps of waste uncontrolled in the place in Germany where I grew up. So this is not acceptable. So talking about environmental impact of food, it has to be mentioned that packaging is, after the carbon footprint of the agricultural raw materials, the second most impacting factor for carbon footprint for industrial food products. Packaging contributes about 5 to 15% of the carbon footprint of the most industrial food products. So when we talk about climate crisis, we have to tackle the topic of packaging, and we come to that later on, how this can be done. Once the packaging, once the food is consumed, the packaging is left as waste. If this packaging is not reused or recycled, we lose precious resources from our planet. We lose that as waste. Or speaking more concretely, we are losing precious resources from the economy, from economic cycles. So reuse and recycling is very important to reduce the environmental impact of packaging. And coming to that, what I mentioned before, littering, uncontrolled deposition of packaging in the environment, be it on land, be it on the fields, be it in public places, in cities, and even more, be it in the marine environment, in rivers and oceans. And plastic in the ocean has become a topic of very, very high concern. So what can we do about that? First of all, we need to design packaging with low environmental impact, and a tool to measure environmental impact is a life cycle analysis. And I come to that in a later slide, explaining more in detail what life cycle analysis means. And we should make sure that packaging is collected and recycled, that it is kept in the economic cycle, that is reducing carbon impact, and it is that leads to a circular economy. And also to that circular economy in more details later on. But first of all, a bit more about the packaging and the negative connotations. Food is important, packaging is important, but not seen as important, but because very often it is a burden to people. Getting rid of the waste, landing in the environment, having the high carbon footprint, but this does not need to happen. For that, we need to tackle the end of life of packaging. So we need to tackle what happens to packaging after the food is consumed. here circular economy plays a major part. And for being part of a circular economy, if we can state that if packaging has an economic value, the material will be kept in the economic cycle, because no one wants to lose an economic value. And to get to this economic value, the collection of packaging and the recycling has the potential to generate this economic value. So if a metal can ends up in the environment, no one is using again the economic value of this metal, which obviously it has. So to get into this cycle, it is paramount to have an infrastructure to collect and recycle the packaging materials. This infrastructure exists in a number of the so-called developed countries, where packaging is just collected in the household and taken from the doorstep every week, taken, sorted, and recycled. But in many places in the world, this infrastructure is generated with an informal sector, with from waste operators, waste pickers. And I'm very happy that Peter later on is diving deeper into that topic, because in our nowadays world, in the areas where we see the highest problems, this informal waste handling sector is very, very important, and it is very important for developing countries where this official or governmental infrastructure does not exist. For this informal sector, it is also very important that the livelihood of the operators needs to be secured and even enhanced, because they are doing a very important job in a whole of a circular economy. And to make all that happen, packaging needs to be designed in a way that recycling is easy and the maximum value can be extracted. And this is the circular economy for packaging. So I've been told that circular economy, the topic as such, was mentioned before in one of the webinars. So just a little reminder, what is a circular economy? A circular economy is coming from a linear economy today, where we take raw materials, we make products, and we dispose or dump the products, into an economy that takes the resources recycled or from natural sources, make products, use the products, recycle the products, and with the recycled materials make the new products. So we are in an economic cycle. And also in a circular economy, we move away from energy from finite sources to energy from renewable sources. And all this leads to a significant reduction in carbon impact. And that is very, very important for our planet. So the contribution to a circular economy is now understood, and many big players, but also industry associations, NGOs have developed guidelines for the design of packaging. So I've taken here an example from Nestle. We called it at the time the golden rules, how to design packaging. It goes from more general considerations, so meaning reducing the amount of packaging that is used, to very detailed advices how to design packaging. Just to give an example, for rigid packaging, so for example, for bottles or tubs, use only 3 materials, either polyethylene or polypropylene or polyester, PET. Because these 3 plastic materials have a value, and they are in many parts of the world collected, sorted, and recycled. But it also has connotations, such a document, what should not be used. For example, packaging from PVC, because it will not be collected nowhere in the world, and it will not be recycled. And when incinerated, it produces toxic fumes. So such rules exist. You have also here some web links where you can read in much more detail how to design packaging, and it is very important that packaging is designed for easy recycling. Now, coming back to the measure for environmental impact of packaging, of any goods, and that is the life cycle analysis tool. The life cycle analysis tool is to measure carbon footprint in kilogram or in tons of CO2 equivalents, but not only. It also takes other environmental influencing factors, impacting factors like energy use, eutrophication of the soil, so degradation of the soil, fresh water use, solid waste generation. All this is considered in such a life cycle analysis, and it helps to compare different types of packaging and to make a decision what packaging to choose. For example, in this spider diagram here, we have a packaging for one product, or 3 types of packaging, and we clearly see that the format 2 has by far the lowest environmental impact in all dimensions of the environmental impact. Life cycle assessment is a tool. There is very simple tools available on the internet, and more complicated tools where you need scientific institutes to do such a thing. Okay, now in the last years, we hear more and more about packaging from bioplastics, and meaning avoiding the usage of fossil oil to create the plastics. So bioplastics are made from renewable resources, ideally from byproducts of agricultural production or forest production. And they can be either then conventional plastics with the same properties and same end-of-life properties like PET, PE, or polypropylene, or they are biodegradable and they are compostable in established collection and composting schemes. And it should be a composted plastic should be value adding for the soil. Such plastic often, not always, to be clear, often have a lower carbon footprint. However, they have a higher impact on other dimensions of environmental impact. So very clearly, bioplastics is not the solution for everything. especially if it comes to composting. First of all, biodegradable or compostable plastics need still to protect the quality of the food. And nowadays, compostable packaging has, by its physical nature, not the water vapor protection properties as it has standard plastics. It should be only used if it is collected and composted, and it only makes environmental sense if the resulting compost adds benefits to the soil. If you take a standard polylactic acid plastic replacement, as such alone does not add much value to the soil. So it's a value created by creating PLA, but not kept in an economic cycle. But biodegradable or compostable packaging makes sense if the product and the packaging are very difficult to separate. So take coffee pots, tea bags. So it's difficult to separate the food inside or the beverage inside and the outside. So it makes sense to put both into the compost, and coffee or tea residues give a fantastic fertilizer. Now, talking about a good example for packaging from renewable resources, and this is paper and board. Now, many companies come back to use paper or board as a packaging material. So just as an example, Smarties is a brand that has moved totally out of plastic back to paper packaging. And paper is made from renewable resources. It's from wood, made from wood. Paper is worldwide amongst the most widely recycled materials. So the wood fibers are kept in an economic loop, and waste paper has an economic value and it's collected. The paper industry has reduced its environmental impact significantly, and also consumers like paper and board packaging because they know it has a good ecological footprint. But we need to make clear, packaging cannot protect every food, and every food needs for protection. So research is ongoing, and we will see an increased use of paper and board packaging. So to conclude on the environmental impact of packaging. So packaging has an important role to play for nourishing the world, for feeding the world. However, packaging should fulfill its role with the lowest possible environmental impact, and that is measured with an LCA. Packaging should fully contribute to a circular economy, and packaging should not be prone to littering so that it ends up in the environment. And just as a quick point to remember, all messages I wanted to distribute here is food packaging is necessary to protect, store, distribute, and sell healthy food. Packaging should not be a burden for the environment, should not be littered, and should have the lowest possible carbon emissions. Packaging should be designed to fit in a circular economy. The main rules are reduce packaging as much as possible. If you are there, think about reusable packaging, and then if it's not reusable, it has to be recyclable. The infrastructure to collect, sort, and recycle plastic packaging needs to be improved in in many countries, or even built. And the informal sector in many countries is important for the waste management, and it needs to be supported and be made part of packaging end-of-life solutions. And the food manufacturing industry has to take the responsibility for the end of life of their products and their packaging, what we call EPR, extended producer responsibility. And with this one sentence, I want to conclude. The contribution to a sustainable development is not an act of philanthropy. It is a basic means to stay in business in nowadays world. It, like the quality of the product, like the safety of the product, contribution to sustainable development is a basic to stay in business and to have a business that makes profit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Franz. That was truly fascinating. And I know that there are some questions that people have from your presentation. And if I can just remind people, if you have a question, any more questions, please put them into Q&A, and we will then put them to our friends, Dr. Franz and Peter, after the next presentation. Franz, would you please be as good to stop sharing your screen? Thank you very much. And Peter, would you like to start sharing your screen while I introduce you? I am very grateful as well that Peter has joined us today. Peter is an amazing young entrepreneur from Uganda, from Gulu, which is a town that I know quite well. So thank you for joining us, Peter. And Peter is the co-founder and chief operating officer of a business called Bioplastics. And Peter, I hope that you are able to share some of your insights and your experience from setting up your business, the reason behind why you thought that this was an important area to get involved in, and let us know a little about your products as well. And I would ask you to speak for a maximum of 20 minutes, and I will send you a 5-minute warning through chat if needed. So Peter, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Oh, thanks, Stephen, and thanks, Franz, for the awesome presentation. I hope you can all see my my presentation.
You're coming through really clearly, and your slide deck is shown as well, so thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll start from a quote that I got from Franz in his presentation. Plastic packaging is a pretty good thing. However, when it comes to the end of its life cycle, it becomes a mess. So therefore, we all need to be part of the solution. So that's where my presentation comes in. And if you see on the presentation, I've put some pictures, not different from what Franz shared. The first picture is a pile of plastic waste. We took this picture from the facility in Kampala. And all the plastic waste is from packaging. That pile is plastic waste from packaging. Then the second picture is me and my co-founder holding awesome tiles that are made from the plastic waste. So in these pictures, I was trying to show the waste crisis, but also the value that we can realize from recycling the waste. Yeah, so I'm co-founder and COO, as Stephen mentioned. I'm co-founder of the Bioplastics, which is a plastic waste social enterprise based in Gulu, Uganda. And we do what we do for two purposes. We transform waste, and at the same time, we empower communities. And we all do this for people, improving the health of the people, improving the air quality of the people in our communities. And we also do this for profits. I mean, to be self-sustainable as a social enterprise, we need to realize some profits from the venture we are handling. Then lastly, we do it for the planet. I mean, we try as much as possible to minimize on the CO2 emissions and make the planet a livable space. And this is briefly about the company mission. Our mission is to recycle plastic waste locally by generating sellable products and creating jobs for at-risk youth. And one would wonder, what does the name Takataka plastics, I mean, Takataka, what does it mean? Those who are familiar with Kiswahili, Takataka is a Kiswahili word that means trash. And why did we come out with this name? In 2019, before we started our operations, I was still lecturing at a local university, and I was also running an initiative that was doing campaigns around environmental sustainability, an initiative I started in 2016 called Afri-Green Sustain. Then I met this awesome lady from UC Berkeley, and together we thought about how best can we change the narrative around plastic waste management in Uganda. So we did a lot of research, moved to different places, and checked out the state of waste management in Uganda, especially in the plastic recycling sector. And initially wanted to do it for academia. Then later on, we're like, if we just do it for academia, we won't really have much impact in the community. So we're like, how about we start a social enterprise? Oh, no, it's a good idea. So I remember we posted on Facebook, asking people about suggestions for names. We're like, oh yeah, we're starting on this plastic recycling farm. So can you suggest names? And there were a lot of suggestions. Some people suggested names like Yugi, which is in Luo and waste. Then a lot of people suggested Takataka. Just call it Takataka, because Takataka means trash. And we're like, wow, this is a good idea. I mean, our bigger vision was to, when we started in Bulu, expand it to other cities in Uganda, and also expand it beyond the borders. And since Takataka is something that people across East Africa are aware of, it will be easier for us to market the company. Then the other reason was we wanted to change the narrative around waste, around plastic waste. I mean, if you move in Gulu and talk about Takataka before we started, people would relate that to trash. I mean, like, nah, why are you talking about trash? Why are you talking about this? But 3 years down the road, if you talk about Takataka in Gulu City, people would relate it to the value that we've created around plastic waste. People will relate it to the employment opportunities that we've given to the at-risk youth. So that's why we started Takataka. And yeah, the major reason that we started the initiative was after doing our research, there were very limited recycling infrastructures. Well, there are different categories of plastics, the hard plastics and the soft plastics. We realized that whereas the hard plastics, like broken basins, broken jerrycans, add value in Uganda, and the players already recycling them. Other plastics like the PET, the plastic bottles, the soda and water bottles, and then the polythene bags add very low value. Actually, at the time we were starting, there was no entity really recycling the plastic bottles into new products within Uganda. All the other entities were doing was to crush the plastics into flakes, then send the flakes over to China and India. So one of these photos, the one with the heap of plastic bottles, we took it at a time when China had announced that they are closing the doors to importation of plastic waste. So we're like, oh yeah, there is this challenge. What do we do about it? We did a lot of research and figured out exactly how to make value out of this. Then the other challenge, of course, that we are trying to address is joblessness, the high youth unemployment rates in Uganda. And we're also trying to address the challenge of street-connected youth. In other countries, they call them homeless youth. So we are trying to address such challenges. And as you can see from some of the statistics, it's evident that a lot of youth in Uganda are released into the job market, but there are only 9,000 available jobs. So like, how do we create jobs in this sector that many people, like in developing countries, many people see this sector as a trashy kind of sector, like not very many people are interested in executive working in this sector. So like, wow, this is a niche. If we give it our best, we can figure out something for the planet, something for people, something for profits. Then the solution we realized was instead of just crushing the plastics and sending the PETs, the flakes to India, China, Turkey, South Africa, we're like, how about we create a local circular economy? How about we start producing construction materials and other sellable products out of these waste plastics. So like, if we do this, we'll be retaining most of the value within the community instead of exporting the value in terms of the flakes. Would be creating some impact for the environment and health, would be creating jobs for young people, would be creating a circular economy. When we came to this point, we're like, okay, let's undertake research. I mean, the chemical properties of PET plastics, that is the soda and water bottles, is very complex. And that is one of the reasons as to why locally in many developing countries, there are no infrastructures to do this. So fortunately, my co-founder has a background in mechanical engineering. So together with some students we recruited from my former university, where I used to attend university, we started doing research, started experimenting, coming out with different types of products that we can get. And why we decided to do this locally, to go local, we're like, if we create a circular solution locally, would have three advantages. I mean, when we want to scale up, the scaling up would mean that the social impact is also scaling up. It would mean that the environmental impact that we yearn for is also scaling up. It also mean that the economic value would also be increasing. And how we do our processes, one, we collect the plastics, we process the plastics and sell the final products within the same community. And we've tried to use many ways to ascertain that our collection works. You move around Gulu City at the moment, we've set up what we call plastic banks in many public spaces. We have more than 60 plastic banks where people deposit, drop in their plastics. And the idea was come out with a way of having sorting done at these public spaces. Because like any other developing country, sorting at the source is still a big challenge. Then we also do school outreach programs. We reach out to schools, talk to students about environmental sustainability, talk to students about proper waste management practices, and create what we call eco clubs. And so the processing, we sort, then we crush the plastics, we wash the plastics, dry them, finally we transform them into the final products. So our primary product are the construction tiles, and it has taken us more than 2 years to come out with our final prototypes, our final products that we are currently selling in the market. However, we also do other products, like make chairs, tables from some other categories of plastics. And During the pandemic, we were making face shields for frontline medical workers, because I mean the frames are made from recycled plastics. We distributed more than 20,000 face shields across Uganda. We're also making mask inserts. Then we also make posters, and we customize our plastics according to the needs of the people in our community. And yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the chemical properties of PET, that is soil and water bottles, is a little difficult, but we figure out how best to transfer the tiles. And the other thing is that we always want, as much as possible, to keep our work local. So some of the machines that we use to process plastics are actually machines that we build locally. I mean, we could import the machines, but the cost associated with importing the machines for a startup company like Bioplastics will be a little high. The other issue is the taxes levied on importation of such machines. And I mean, I don't know about other countries, but in Uganda, social enterprises are treated the same way as fully for-profit enterprises. So all the taxes and all the issues around taxes, as much as they affect the private sector players, they also affect social entrepreneurs, and many social enterprises run out of business because they could not handle all these high taxes levied by the government. So besides using the machines for operations, we also sell the machines to other entrepreneurs in other cities who want to explore plastic recycling, because we believe by doing this, then our impact is increased. Yeah, one would wonder why we decided to choose the construction tiles. After doing research, we realized that Uganda still faces about 8 million unit housing shortage, and the market is awesome. So the market is at around $3 billion, and it's growing at 8% annually. So we're like, wow, this is amazing. And what products can we make in the construction market? And looking at the properties of PET, we realized that one of the products that is construction tiles. So we started making construction tiles. And we are super flexible in our operations. So when COVID hit, we kind of changed our line and started making the face shields for frontline medical workers. So these are just some of the other products that we make. I just put in a few on the slide. Then one important thing when it comes to waste management in developing countries like Uganda is the aspect of changing mindsets. I mean, the attitude and perception of members of the community around waste management is very, very different. One thing is many community members think that waste management, I mean, they're not supposed to handle the waste. They think that it's the duty of the government. They think that it's the duty of the municipal offices to handle the waste. So you have to really invest a lot of time and a lot of energy in changing the mindset. So on the left is one of the collection bins, or rather plastic bags that we place. Then we also do community cleanup activities with members of the community. Then we have a project called Plastic School, which is aimed at doing school outreach. So besides going to the schools, we've equipped a 40-foot shipping container with a small-scale recycling machine. So we bring students over to our facility so that they check out. I mean, instead of just talking about waste management, plastic recycling, we bring them on board so that they experience exactly what is being done, and they also participate in doing the recycling, because we believe by doing that, that will kind of set their mindset to kind of always remind them, because they have done something practically to always remind them that, well, with this plastic waste, there is a possibility of doing this and this. Then, we started in 2020 and we were just 5 employees. Now we've grown to 42. We are 42 employees, and nearly half of the employees are vulnerable youth, former street connected youth. Yeah, so that is one of our impacts. And one key aspect that we embed in our operations at that time, I mean, some of the youth are trauma survivors. One aspect that we decided to add in was trauma counseling sessions. So we have a full department that does trauma counseling, and this has helped improve productivity, helped us do much better in our operations. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we are 2 co-founders. My other co-founder is Malcolm. She has a PhD in mechanical and development engineering from UC Berkeley. I also thought about sharing some of our impacts. So these are our impacts in 2022. Last year, we were able to prevent 30 tons of PET plastics from polluting the environment. We raised up to $1 million through sales, donations, and grants. By the end of last year, we had 37 full-time staffs, and we prevented about 70 tons of CO2 from entering the atmosphere. So when you look at our impact, you will see the aspect of people, you will see the aspect of profits, and you also will see the aspect of the planet. And these are some of our bold goals for this year. We anticipate by the end of the year, we'll have 50 full-time employees. We'll have recycled about 120 tons of plastic waste into sellable products. Would have reached up to 2 million people through different campaigns. We do a lot of campaigns, oftentimes get free radio time, airtime. We use comedy groups to merge entertainment and the message we want to send. And also using the programs. Then we also train students, not only primary and secondary school students. We bring in interns from across the world. We work with interns from UC Berkeley. We work with some interns from Aalborg University in Denmark. We have interns from Italy, and from the local universities. And yeah, we want to position ourselves beyond just a recycling facility. If you can relate to the presentation of yesterday, we are beyond the recycling facility.
Peter, I'm going to jump in briefly. You have 1 minute.
Oh, perfect. I'm actually almost done. Thanks. Yeah. So we are established to achieve bold goals and create sustainable impacts for profits in the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Sorry for jumping in there as well.
No, that's fine.
What I'm really excited about this and your company and the work that you're doing is, I don't know if you've heard of the term creating shared value. The idea of a business that does good, that goes beyond the product that you're creating. And you can obviously see that Taka Taka Plastics not only is creating some really innovative and in-demand products that are responsive to the needs of customers, but you're also having a significant impact, not just in terms of employability, of wealth creation, creation of jobs, but also in terms of taking a waste product that is littering the environment and bringing it back into a value chain stream. So thank you for sharing that with us. I do have a couple of very brief questions.
I have a couple of questions for our presenters. The first one is from Gerard. Gerard says young companies in Cote d'Ivoire are faced with packaging concerns in general and above all eco responsibility. What opportunities can the platform offer to meet this need? And the second question, that one, the first one goes to Franz and the second one goes to Peter. How did you go about getting young people interested in working with you in garbage, given the mentality they generally have about young people who venture in garbage?
So 2 questions there. One is, I think particularly, how can a young entrepreneur actually identify and seize the opportunities within recycling and reusing of waste, whether it's plastic or other products that are available in the environment? And secondly, how do we change the mindset of people from littering, just throwing bottles away, and actually see those as something that we can either change people's attitudes towards or creating businesses out of? Franz, Peter, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'll go first. How do we change the mindset of young people around waste management? Yeah, there are a couple of ways we can execute to change the mindset. But one important thing that young people want to see is value. If you can show them that there is value in working with waste, you can show them that there is not only economic value, but there is value to the society they live in, then in one way or the other, you will be changing their mindsets. Because I mean, when we started in 2020, there was no other plastic recycling venture, for example, in Gulu. But 2 years down the road, we've seen some young people coming up and starting up similar ventures. Also, when we started, if you saw on the slides, we were only 5 team members. But after realizing some value, after raising some funding and recruiting more people, then a couple of youth were like, wow, this is a venture that we can really play a part in. Then the other thing is we work with the informal sector. So we've trained more than 100 people in the informal sector. And now that the demand for our products is increasing, and thus the need for more plastics is also increasing, we are currently adding value to what they do, and we are buying some of the plastics is people in the informal sector. So the key thing is to show them that there is value in what you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Peter. Franz, do you have any thoughts?
Should I to this question or to the question, the first question? So concerning how to incentivize or to how to engage young people in properly handling waste. I think what Peter said is absolutely right. Make the value obvious, the value of the waste obvious, then it's clear that people are more careful with what they throw away. So a simple example is the deposit that you pay on beverage bottles in some countries. You simply don't find these beverage bottles anymore in the environment because there's poor people that go around and collect these, bring them back, and they make their daily living of that. And yeah, so fully support what you say, Peter. That makes most sense. The other question is concerning support in designing or eco-friendly packaging. The end of the question was, how can this platform support? I don't know what platform is meant here. Is it this webinar series or so? I understand this is a hot and difficult topic, especially in countries in Africa. First of all, getting the packaging that is made from one material, which makes it recyclable. So either from PE or PET or so, just one material. It's difficult, but it's possible. And the demand needs to be created. I think the more there is the demand, the traders, most of these packaging materials are imported from China, imported from South Africa, also from Saudi Arabia. These traders, they are very flexible. And when there is the demand, they will shift their offer, very sure. Number one. Number two, you can find on the internet very, very good design tools. Sustainable packaging designs, if you just Google that, you find some very good tools. How to do that? If you need a personal support, so face-to-face or video or support, I currently don't know. The only initiative I know is that ITC, that's a sub-organization of the United Nations, is doing trainings on sustainable packaging in Africa and also in East Africa. I've contributed to such a training. So if you are able to hook up onto one of these trainings, there you get even a person-to-person support. It's ITC.
Okay, thank you for that, Franz. I've got one more question, and I know that we are very, very short of time on now, but I'd like to invite Anne on, Dr. Anne Roulin, who I believe has got a question for Franz. Anne, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
You're coming through clear.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Franz and Peter, for those great presentations. I mean, Franz, you outlined a lot of the problems, and Peter came along with the solutions he's implementing, so it was fantastic. I just have a quick question for Franz about biodegradable packaging, because a lot of people think it's like a panacea for all problems. Could you just say a few words about the conditions required for the packaging to biodegrade?
Yeah, most biodegradable packaging need a humid but not a watery environment. So they basically what you have in a compost heap. And if you throw, when people think it's biodegradable, they throw it into nature, the packaging. There, especially in arid regions, it's dry. So the microorganisms that degrade the materials cannot work, do not work. So it's this so-called biodegradable packaging is not degrading. Even also if it's in a full water environment, also the microorganisms are not working. So it needs a controlled environment for these packages to degrade. So that means a compost heap, or even more an industrial composting, which usually works at elevated temperatures around 35 degrees, high relative humidity, so that these microorganisms can work and degrade to soil. So just putting it somewhere, it does not degrade. And if you communicate this is biodegradable, people would think this is biodegradable, so throw it somewhere because it degrades. This is not the case, and it's not the solutions to the problems. It needs an infrastructure for industrial, for large-scale composting.
Thank you for that, Franz. That was very clear. I'm going to stop the questions there. We are over time now, but can I just say a sincere thank you to Franz and Peter for joining us this morning. There are a couple more questions, I think, which I will put to you by email, and then I can add some answers. If you could give me very brief email answers, I can then add that to our deck as well. which we will share after this event with our audience. So thank you. Taking control, just to finish off this webinar, we have thrown some additional resources into the presentation deck, which as I say, will be emailed to you after this webinar. There is a very good report from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation about circular economy in Africa. And it's looking not just at packaging, but also at agriculture. So I thought that might be quite relevant to everybody. Now, of course, this is just a brief sample of some of the resources that are available. There's plenty more if you use the search engines on the internet. I had found, and I'll be honest, I hadn't actually heard of this organization, but there is now the African Circular Economy Network, which appears to be based in several different countries across the continent. And they have an interesting little map online which identifies a number of case studies of businesses that are involved in circular economy across Africa. So this may be something that may interest you. And there is also a design pack from FAO on packaging solutions for developing countries. And this is available for download in English, French, and Spanish. So I hope that those 3 additional resources might be of use. But as I say, there's plenty more information out there, as both Peter and Franz have suggested. As always, I need to say a quick thank you to Ecom, who have supported this webinar series. But more importantly, thank you to everybody, Franz, Peter, for participating. But thank you to yourselves for actually joining this webinar and listening and engaging. If you have any questions about this webinar or about the work of the Agripreneurship Alliance, please feel free to send us an email. You can always contact me at stephen@theagripreneur.org, and John at theagripreneur.org is also available in Uganda. And I really look forward to next week's webinar, which is our last one in the series. And we'll be having a more interactive session, I hope, reflecting on the journey that we've done together, retouching on many of the topics that we have engaged in, as well as, I hope, hearing from some of the perspectives of participants of the series. So there'll be something coming through to you in your email box about that. Thank you again, Franz, Peter. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we will see you in the same time, same place next week for our 10th and final webinar in the series. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.